Hello, good people. This is Sabac Red, mostly known from the group Non-Phixion, and you're checking out the B-Shine. What I remember most about growing up in my neighborhood, I grew up in an area called Gravesend, Brooklyn, which is right next to Bensonhurst and Coney Island. So it's pretty diverse, a lot of Italians, Puerto Ricans. We had Marlboro projects down the block. And I remember a friend of mine had a boombox, and I remember hearing Nucleus jam on it, and it just blew my mind. And then I remember watching videos, I think it might have been Wild Style. I remember seeing a video. My friend's older brother had the movie, and watching folks breakdancing. And I tried it, and it was great. I felt really good. So I started to embrace the idea of breakdancing, b-boying, and listening to hip-hop. And at that time, you had, it was Marley Marl and DJ Red Alert. Kid Capri came on a little bit later as well, and just started making tapes and then just listening to it. And I think what I love most and what got me on it as a young kid, maybe like 11 years old, 12 years old, was that it was also very rebellious for that time, right? For someone in my neighborhood who looked like me to start listening to rap music, which was stereotyped as black music and black music only. And that's where it's rooted, right? But I also love the fact that I had that rebellion. So I would put the headphones on at night so my mom wouldn't know what I was listening to, and that, you know, the neighbors, they didn't necessarily know until one day I saved up for a boombox. I have a twin sister. My sister and I both together. We saved up. We got a boombox, and I don't remember what cassette I bought. It might have been like a Sleeping Bag, Tila Rock, It's Yours or something, and you get a free like Nocera record. It was like this freestyle music. Sleeping Bag at the time was the label. And I remember just walking down the block with the boombox, looking for refrigerator boxes to breakdance on and b-boy on, and it was absolutely incredible. And there began the journey. And then I had friends, because I lived 2 stops away from Coney Island, so I had friends who go to Coney Island yards and do graffiti and bomb, and it was just like embracing it. And I tried it, and I was absolutely terrible as a writer. So they had me just do the fillers. So I would just go and just, you know, color in whatever pieces that they did at the time, and that was it, man. And then we would have block parties every summer. You know, different blocks would have a DJ set up, and they'd play hip-hop, and they'd play freestyle music, and I would always grab the mic and freestyle, like, you know, off the top of my head, and began to get a reputation, formerly known as John Red, because of the red hair. And it was great, and it was this expectation that consistently grew every time someone would see me. They knew that I was going to get down and dance, and they knew that I was going to probably freestyle if there was a block party. So I gained this reputation in my immediate neighborhood. And then Coney Island out, there's a section of Coney Island called Seagate, and they would have parties out on Seagate, and I would go there every time there was a party as well and get on the stage and rock. And I remember there was an artist named John Carter who lived not too far from where I lived, who had a song called Buggin' Brooklyn. I'm taking people back right now. People are like, what the heck is going on? But anyway, got up with him, started doing some tracks, and then eventually, and Q Unique from the Arsonist went to my school. He's a little older than I am, but he went to my school, and he remembered me when I met him later on when we were doing Non-Phixion. He was doing Arsonist. That when I was a kid in high school, my freshman year, to make money, I got with this DJ, and he would do parties, and he would do parties for Big Daddy Kane, and he would do parties for Tila Rock and Milk and Gizmo and Audio 2 at the local club called Stargazers. And he would say, hey, John, hand out these flyers, put your initial on it, and I'll give you 50 cents for every person that comes in with your flyer. So I was on the hustle and the grind. And Q Unique, he'll tell you, always used to come and look for me because I always had the flyers, and I always knew which party was popping. So yeah, that was some of my history, man. That was the venturing off. And then I remember just watching folks battle, right, in elementary school in Sethlow. I went to Sethlow Junior High School, PS 96. And I remember there were these 2 brothers. Actually, check this out. I'm a twin. There was Keith and Kevin, who were twins, right? And Derek and Eric, who were twins. Derek and Eric were from the Marlboro Projects across the street, right? And Keith and Kevin were from Coney Island. And we just had a crew. And they would just consistently be at the schoolyard, and they would battle. And one day I went home, and I wrote some raps. And I came back, and I tried to get in the cypher, and it was terrible. It was the worst thing ever. It was terrible. But they appreciated that here's someone that looks like me at that time. Not a lot of folks who look like me were doing it. You know, I'm Puerto Rican and Sicilian, and I look Irish, so I stood out for sure. And but I kept doing it, and the next day I came back, and I had bars, and I spit it. But it was misogynistic. It was battle rap and all of that. I remember being backstage with Big Daddy Kane and Scoop and Scrap. They were smoking a blunt. Passed it to me. I wasn't really into it, but, you know, just was back there and having that opportunity, and then watching Big Daddy Kane start to warm up, you know, before he hit the stage. Watching Greg Nice, before Nice and Smooth, do the beatbox. He used to do a beatbox for Tila Rock on Sleeping Bag Records. I think one of the favorite early memories, too, was going to the Nassau Coliseum, and I went to go see, it was Public Enemy, Run DMC, EPMD, Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. Blew my mind, and I was a shorty, and I had folks in the neighborhood who were older than I was who took me under their wing, and they would take me out. And I just remember watching Public Enemy, the S1Ws, and Flavor Flav. Blew my mind away, right? That was a really good early memory, hip-hop memory. And the other one, I think, and I had said this before in some interviews, was in the 80s, there was a young man named Yusuf Hawkins that got killed in Bensonhurst. And my English teacher had asked that everyone write an essay around racism. So I asked if I can write a rap, and I wrote this rap called Racial Prejudice Affects Us All, long title. And I wrote it, and it was entered into this this statewide contest in New York City specifically, the 5 boroughs, and then ended up winning first place. And I remember I got presented with an award from the Brooklyn Borough president at the time. I got a $100 savings bond. I was in the newspaper. I think I still have the clipping somewhere. And that moment from writing those battle raps that were somewhat misogynistic, bravado, etc., kind of transformed a little bit into the fact that I can say something with a message, and it translates, and it's got some notoriety and validation. So that was kind of that memory for me as well. And then one last other memory, it was early but not a childhood memory, was MC Search, because I used to, be down with Search, and a friend of mine, he brought me to the last taping of Yo MTV Raps. I don't know if you've ever seen that before, right? But the last episode of Yo MTV Raps, it was everyone and their mother who was there. And I remember I was standing actually on the back couch, standing up while the cypher was going on, and it was Rakim, Large Professor, Chub Rock. I mean, everybody. I would encourage you to at least Google or YouTube that cypher of Yo MTV Raps, but I was physically there, lost my mind. I was attending audio engineering school in the early 90s, and everyone was encouraged to get an internship at a recording studio, but I ended up getting an internship at the New Music Seminar, which is this big festival that would happen in New York City. And I remember my internship was placed in the A&R department. So I got a chance to listen to all this new music that was coming in. And at that time, it was Arrested Development. It was House of Pain. The list goes on. Cypress Hill. And I remember working with a woman named Melanie. And Tommy Boy was in the offices of Tommy Boy Records. So, a lot of folks would come through. People come through. And one of my responsibilities was to make sure that the artists had their badges for the evening events. Because the seminar was all these panels during the day. And at night, there'd be these great... every venue hosted some kind of a performance, and I always was doing the hip-hop time of it. So I remember I ran into MC Search there one day, and I grew up listening to Third Bass, loved Third Bass. Search was dope. He was ill. And I remember I just said, what's up to him at the booth, gave him his badge, and that was it. He said, what's up? Cool. About 2.5, maybe 3 months later, I went up for an audition. I was on a hustle. So I went up for an audition for a TV series that Russell Simmons and Quincy Jones was producing. It was called B-Boys. And I remember I walked in. I saw it in the newspaper. I got a flyer. Someone gave me the information. And I walk up in there, and there was Onyx. Before they were Onyx, right? There was Mos Def, at the time known as Dante, right? MC Search. It was the UMCs, right? A lot of other people. I can't remember. My boy Donald Faison, who I ended up being friends with later on. Chill from Groove Beat Chill before the injury, before he was in the wheelchair. And MC Search. And there was only room for 5 people to get the role. So lots of other people auditioned. I remember this, and Russell Simmons probably has this somewhere in stock footage. But part of my audition was I needed to rap. But I was inside the auditioning room with Busta Rhymes. So I was rapping. Busta decided to do the beatbox. He liked what he heard. So I was literally rapping to Russell Simmons, Quincy Jones' assistant, with Busta Rhymes doing the beatbox. Absolutely insane. Fast forward, I made it down to the final 6. And I remember the final call of the 6 people who were going to make this audition was Donald Faison, Fredro Starr, Mos Def, MC Search, someone else, I can't remember, and me. And the part was for DJ 2020. And I'm guessing that everyone else was black. Search and I were the only white, looking people. And I remember they called me in and they said, "Hey, John, you did a great job. We really appreciate you. Thank you so much. The part we're going to give to MC Search." Now, granted, Russell Simmons, Def Jam, plus Search probably killed the audition, So anyway, I said, all right, peace. I was so crushed, disappointed. I came so close. I think they only filmed like 2 episodes, and I don't know what happened to the show. So I saw him again. Then one night I was at a party, and I see Search again. So we kept running into each other. And I remember David Falastino, Bud Bundy, I think it's Falastino, was on stage. And I said, "What's up to Search?" And Search was like, "You want a record deal?" I was like, "Sure, I want a record deal." He's like, "Go battle Bud Bundy." I was like, wow, you're really asking to go do that? That's like a no-brainer, But he was just like, being facetious, I think, you know what I mean? But anyway, I was like, "Let's go do it." He's like, no, whatever, And he just liked that. That's what it was. So that's the 3rd time I ran into him. Last time, he took my number, but never called. My boy M-Try, shout out to M-Try, was doing a show in Brooklyn at a club called Christopher's, opening up for MC Search with DJ Riz and DJ Eclipse. I went on stage and rocked with my boy M-Try. After the show, Search told Eclipse to go get my number. I said, "For what?" I said, "For what?" I know him 3 times already. I met him 3 times. He never called me. He was like, "Nah, come out, tell him to come to the van." So I went out to the van. I was like, "Search, I gave you my number 3 times, bro. Like, you never." He was like, "No, give me your number. Trust me, we're going to make it happen." Because he had called me on stage, actually, to freestyle, and I freestyled off the dome, and I guess he liked it. Never called. Weeks went by. I literally get off the train. I was working in Soho at that time at a spot called Nana, and I remember getting off the train in Brooklyn, and my mom's had beeped me, because we had beepers at the time, and she beeped me. And I went to the phone booth and I called her back. She goes, "Some guy named Search called." I was like, "Oh, really?" He's like, "Yeah." He said, "Call him back. It's really important." So called Search, got home, called Search. He was like, "Yo, if you're really down and you're really about it, come out to Long Island right now. I'm in the studio with OC." I'm like, "Long Island?" I'm like, "It's like 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night. Got to take the long. I don't have a car." He was like, "Well, make it happen." It was on some like Puff Daddy, like go over the Brooklyn Bridge and get me like Junior's cheesecake. But it wasn't that deep. But so anyway, I called my boy Albie, who had a car at the time. I said, "Yo, let's go to studio, Long Island." MC Search. My boy came through, sipped on a little something, went out to Long Island, got into the studio. OC was there, recording, got in the booth. I remember I actually got in the booth and did a hook. I don't remember what song it was. It wasn't the Ozone. It was some song that he had recorded for the Word Life album. And it was dope, man. It was chill. And then from there, he saw the energy in the studio was good. And then Search and I just started hanging out. And we just started gelling. And he said, like, "Come out to Long Island, come to my house. I'm going to play you beats. Let's just rhymes." And at that time, I was in a group called Piece of the Puzzle. Me and my dude named Mr. Barnes, who was one of the twins, right? Kevin, from back in the days. So we started this group, and Search started executive producing. I've got demos that Eclipse produced some stuff. Eclipse, The Force of One, B-Rock, Search. Like, we got tracks that we did. We recorded like 5 songs. And then the direction was very different. So Mr. Barnes and I from Piece of Puzzle, we kind of split. And then I started doing more solo stuff. So I started getting out to Long Island more often and recording in Search's house. I remember being in Search's house writing rhymes. And Search saying, I have to go to studio. I got to check out Nas. Because he was doing Illmatic. He was executive producing Illmatic. Search comes back. And he goes, "Yo, you got to hear this." And he plays me Represent. I took my paper, crushed it up, threw it in the garbage. I was like, wow. Represent, they call me Nas. I'm not your legal type of fella. When man, I just smoke and drink. I'm just like blown away. So I was like, okay, I got to step my game up. And I was like, I need more time. I just kept writing. And Search was still molding and sculpturing. Now, granted, you have to understand, Search has OC. He has Nas. He's working with me and some other people. And but never gave up, kept encouraging. Search landed a position at Wild Pitch Records as VP, senior VP of marketing, I think it was, or whatever it was. And he asked me if I want to do college radio promotion. So that's what I ended up doing. So I had a little office up at Wild Pitch. It's funny, I saw OC yesterday at the Stretch and Bobbito 25th anniversary, and we were building. And OC will tell you stories of sitting in my office for hours just talking about music, talking about making sure that Wild Pitch is going to do the right thing by him. And, you know, I remember hustling that record hard, calling from New York all the way to the Bay, and in between asking folks to play Word Life, making sure they got the record times up, you know, pushing that album hard for college radio. So that was kind of the trajectory right there into nonfiction. And then the rest of it becomes... I used to see Ill Bill all the time. I used to see Necro, you know, at the New Music Seminar battling, you know. So I knew who Necro was. You know, I knew who Ill Bill was vaguely just from being on the scene. And I used to see him down when I used to leave work. And one day I walked into the store. He was working there. He worked into this, like, hip-hop clothing store. And I said, hey, would you play this Word Life album? He was like, oh, see? He's like, yeah, I already got it. I was like, okay, dope. He was like, yeah, we play it all the time. Cool. He's like, you know Search? You work with Search? I said, yeah. He was like, yo, hand them off this record. He gives me this vinyl called Dope Fiend that he had done, a single that was released. I don't even know if it was released with his permission, but he ended up getting copies. And it eventually, through a couple of other things, it got played for Search. Search called a meeting with Ill Bill, said it was dope. Search and I had always talked about maybe putting together a group. And that was it. There's a trajectory of that. My mom specifically was really, really excited. She was always skeptical because she never trusted the music industry. See, although really, you know, I've been rapping for many, many years, and I was in groups before, you know. True story, like I was in a group that was more like a Gladys Knight and the Pips, but I was the MC of the group back in the days when I was like 14 years old, called Focus. We rapped at Mark Jackson, New York Knicks Mark Jackson at the time. Him and Desiree Coleman got married, and they got married at a place called the Pyramid in Jamaica, Queens. And I rapped at the wedding. Like, my mom's was there. Patti LaBelle was there. Keith Sweat. Like, it was insane. I got pictures back in the days in the studio with Q-Tip. I posted on my Instagram because we would be in the studio with Bow-Legged Lou. So I had these ventures I've always wanted to do. My mom was always supportive, right? Doing shows at Sweetwater's. Uptown, and doing shows at the Ark in Brooklyn, doing shows at the Pyramid and Mysteries in Jamaica, Queens off of Merrick Boulevard. So doing this, but my mom was always skeptical of the industry. So she was supportive of the talent. She saw how it was like keeping me occupied and staying out of trouble because we were dealing with some family stuff at the time. You know, single mom raising twins on her own. I mean, it was definitely challenging, cliche, but extremely real and extremely challenging. So it was like my energy was slowly being transformed. So she was super supportive. And they would come out to the shows, you know. And I remember actually one show that I had back in the days, it was the time that Buster Douglas knocked out Mike Tyson. And some family members who came to the show were pissed because they missed the fight. So you can think back. But they were so super supportive coming to the shows, but definitely skeptical about contracts, about things like that, based on the management that I had back then when I was a little kid. What I like most about being an artist is the ability to be able to take space, and for me specifically, the way what I personally feel like being an artist, the ability to take in information and inspiration and translate it into language, into semantics, in a creative and fluid way that reaches people. You know, to be able to go to a show, you know, 20 years later after Nonfiction, you know, became a group in 95 and do a show in Manhattan and across Canada, you know, and overseas, and seeing people sing the lyrics is absolutely amazing. To hear people sing Sabacalypse lyrics from the first album that I did with Necro or the Ritual album is absolutely amazing. So to see how that transformed, and most importantly, for me and the message and the core values that I stand for, to see supporters, fans, if you want to call them, come up to me and be like, listen, when I was in college, you know, I listened to your music and you helped me get through something in my life, you know, or you helped me think about things or question or challenge authority or challenge your standard form of education when we were being forced, you know, when something was being forced down our throats and we were able to challenge that. And the other part I think I like a lot about being an artist, my favorite thing to do is be on stage. I love performing on stage. I love releasing the energy on stage. It could be the fact that being validated from an audience, or seeing how the being from the studio, right, to the format, whether it's digital or analog, and how it reaches the people and they respond to a live show. I love it. I have lots of energy. Yeah. So the future is now genuinely an organic process. I mean, you have to think, we were making demos in studios in Long Island, and then eventually in Area 51, which is a studio that was built in Canarsie, Brooklyn. And, you know, shout out to Necro, who produced a lot of the early music and a lot of the Nonfiction Future Is Now album. To be able to start to gel with one another as we get these beats, songs like Legacy, right, that was produced by C-Style from Total Pack, No Tomorrow, thinking about Five Boroughs, right, getting in the studio in Brownsville with DR Period, who just came off of the Smooth the Hustler, Trigger the Gambler, Broken Language vibe. I mean, that was the era. And here we are in the studio because we had bars. And I think one of the things that we made sure that we always did was make sure our bars were tight, because there's no room for error when you look like this, especially during that time. It wasn't a spray and pray. It was like you had to be ill and you had to be dope. So we would constantly be in the studio and we write. Bill would call me up, yo, check out this hook. Listen to this verse. I'd call Bill up, like, check out Gore-Tex. And in the early stages, Search was in the group. He was an active member of Nonfiction. There was 5 of us. It was me, Bill, Gore-Tex, Search, and DJ Eclipse. And then eventually Search, faded out of the picture, but we continued to do music. So we were like, okay, we've got this contract with Geffen Records, but we're doing songs like I Shot Reagan, right? Doing songs like Refuse to Lose, really anti-establishment, anti-corporation, government. And they got afraid. Like, what do I do with this? But it was a blessing. I mean, we got a nice deal out of Geffen Records. We were signed to them at the time that the Roots were signed to them, and the Jizzer, Killer Priest. We had great label mates. So we were like, okay, that's not going to work, but we need to put together this album. And Bill knew Large Professor. Premier, Pete Rock would play our records on their local mix shows, the Legacy No Tomorrow, because they were serviced with the records from Fat Beats, and they genuinely liked it. So when it came time to put together our wish list, we put it together. And Search had always talked about, like, we'll make sure that this happens. We can make something like this happen. And then when he faded out, we didn't have him anymore as that catalyst and conduit. So we had to do it on our own. So Bill did a lot of work to make that happen. Eclipse, shout out to Eclipse, I would say by far one of the hardest working people in this business. A testament to that was at the 25th anniversary of Stretch and Bob and some Summer Stage. But anyway, so a lot of those meetings took place. And when we presented to them, we weren't sure what they were going to come back with, right? What kind of price or whatever. And if I would even tell you what we ended up paying, you'd laugh. How like ridiculously inexpensive, like pennies comparison to what they were getting at that time. The Premier had just done a Limp Bizkit record, right? He had done, well, obviously, his history. But it was awesome because they genuinely loved what we did. And I remember just being in the studio Premier and putting the records together, creating the bump, 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 and then the cuts for Rock Stars. We came to him with the idea for Rock Stars, what we wanted to cut, and but the beat he formulated and structured there and there, absolutely incredible. And Pete Rock, we got a lot of beats. We got beat tapes from Pete Rock. And then we finally chose it down to If You Got Love. And Bill and Gore-Tex did that one. And Large Professor, genius, man. I mean, one of my favorites to work with ever. I just remember him coming into the studio with, the SP1200 and then this other keyboard that he had. And when we were doing We Are the Future, just like it wasn't complete yet. And kind of laying in the corner and adding those choom, 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 those sound effects, just like being so into it. And doing multiple tracks with him. And then obviously being in the studio with Necro and doing the pre-productions or getting that Black Helicopters beat was cool. Absolutely amazing. The CIA is trying to kill me. I mean, so here we are. And then we get the beats from them. And like, wait, we got Large Professor. We got Premier. We got Pete Rock. We got Necro. Like, wow, this is incredible. Who else? We love the Beat Nuts. Beat Nuts by far. I mean, that was a little, but we love the Beat Nuts. And, at that time, we had a chance to meet with Juju and Psycho Les. They would come to the studio. They seen us at shows at the Lyricist Lounge and a whole bunch of other events here in New York City. As big as New York is, it's a small community, especially in that era of hip-hop. So we ended up getting in the studio with the Beatnuts and doing Suicide Bomb, which was incredible. And, yeah, man. And then Dave One, who produced Cult Leader as well, was on the album. Who Dave One, now, most people know him as Dave from Chromeo, him and P Thug. So they produced some joints for us back in the days, and now you see like an 8-track did all the cuts, So it was a really amazing album, frustrating at times, but being in the studio, like being in D&D studio, right? And running into MOP and running into DITC and folks that were recording there and going into Green Street Studios at Pete Rock and then Chung King Studios. I mean, Bill, myself, Gore-Tex Eclipse, all of us would buy music and read the insert and read where it was recorded, who engineered it, and we would see, like, this is where we are. So that was an absolute dream come true. And then we ended up putting it out independently through Uncle Howie and Landspeed. And, in hindsight, maybe we should have done things a little bit differently, but it stood the test of time. And here we are, like 12 years later that the album came out, 13 years later, and it still holds to be what some folks would consider an extreme classic of music, independent or not. Some of the highlights in my career as a hip-hop artist and as an artist is the friends that I was able to make as a result of this. We were in Philadelphia a couple of nights ago and had a chance to sit down and have dinner with Vinny Paz, who's like brother from another mother, and Outer Space, and King Size, and then thinking about the friends like Eclipse. When I look at my wedding pictures at my wedding, Eclipse, Bill, Necro, Mr. High, Q Unique, like they're at my wedding. This is like, this is real. This is like family. So the friends that I was able to make throughout, seeing OC the other day and be like, Bach, I love you, bro, because he knows at Wild Pitch back then, like what I stood for, the integrity and making sure the music is being heard. And another highlight, which I just thought about, was I remember doing a show. Nonfiction opened up for Run DMC at Tramps. And I remember we got off stage and there was maybe one other act. And then Run DMC, Jam Master Jay, took the stage. And I was on the side of the stage as you go up these steps. And I'm here. DMC's here. And Run's here, or vice versa. And then Jay is on stage and he's going, run, 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 run. And I'm like, I'm in Crush Groove right now. Like, I'm in Crush Groove, right? Like, Sheila E's going to be there. Like, Russell is about to get slapped. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy. It's like, I'm in Crush Groove. And it was absolutely amazing. So I remember that highlight because Run DMC was like my idols, like that. I grew up on them. So to see backstage right there, that moment of them getting on stage was incredible. One of the things that I'm most proud of is never compromising when oftentimes asked to the content of what I'm passionate about, which is my message music. The Nonfiction album was very authentic. It's where we were at that time. And if you listen to the Sabacalypse album or the Ritual album or multiple features and collaborations that I have done and freestyles, I've never compromised integrity. And what I'm most proud of is by doing that, just hearing the feedback from folks, whether it's, 25,000, 250,000, or whether it's 2-3 people at a park who thank me for that because there's some kind of translation into molding and shaping someone to be a better human being. And that's real talk. I mean, I've gotten emails from folks saying, that I've saved their life. And I'm like, really? Like, yeah. Or that the song I did called Death and Destiny off the Ritual album helped them get through someone in their family who passed away. Or someone wants to have a conversation of a song I did called Television, right? About how, TV is taking over and technology is way beyond what we thought it would be and there's no more interaction, human. So just a conversation. I'm really proud of that. I want to be known like years from now. It sounds like such a morbid question with all that's going on now too. It's like, but I genuinely want to be known as Sabac was a really nice guy. And from the fans, artists in the industry, I'm funny. I've got a great sense of humor, because some people perceive me to be serious and they want to get deep all the time. You know, Q Unique, shout outs. Will be like, you're one of the funniest dudes I know. I got jokes. Wise guy. You know, Eclipse will even call me the false prophet, because he was like, how do you have this kind of mentality when you talk about all this? I'm a whole human being. And I genuinely love people. I love to love. I love to communicate. You know, just don't cross me the wrong way. Don't cross my family and my people. But I want to be known, and I want to be remembered as someone who didn't compromise his integrity, his values, but not only in the music, but as a human being face to face when you meet me. And a lot of people are like, well, you had non-fiction, you put out some solo records, what have you been doing? You know, I moved out to the Bay Area, to Oakland, 10 years ago now. In 2005, I moved out there, and I do a lot of work in the community. So I work predominantly with high school students. So I manage these grants that allow high school students to have an opportunity to develop their academic, social, and emotional skills. And that's a passion of mine. And I'm so fortunate and blessed to be able to know that, you know, having done hip-hop for so long, that the fallback, if you will, directly aligns with who I am as a human being. And still I can incorporate my artistry. So that's what I get to do for a living. You know, I get to get this money that's given to me to be able to allocate to amazing artists, right, to produce absolutely amazing programs for under-resourced students in the Bay Area, specifically Oakland. And I love when they find out also like who I am and what I do, because I don't usually share a lot of it. And they're like, oh man, that's crazy.